So my name is Sam Lark, work on the Leicester Startups Initiative. We try to support high-growth, scalable startups in Leicester, Leicestershire. We run accelerator programs, startup weekends, all sorts of stuff. You folks are probably aware of most of it because you probably registered to our newsletter. So one of the other things we do is host regular events, of which this is one. And we're very grateful that Elliott Perry has managed to join us today. He's been on quite a journey over the past, 10 years? Well, anyway, we'll dive into that. And he and I caught up yesterday ahead of this session just to have a chat, run through the format, and he was kind enough to send me an email of some of the things that he's been working on, achieved over the years. And so, yeah, we could easily double the 1 hour allocation we've got, so we need to get started. Elliott, would you mind introducing yourself? And then we'll just get into it.
Sure, yeah. Hi guys, I'm Elliott. I'm actually moving to Leicester very, very soon, and hence the ambition to just get involved in the Leicester startup ecosystem. If I can reflect on my experience and offer any insights or anything educational whatsoever that could be of any use to anybody, that makes my day. And so I'm an open book. If anybody, I think there's a Q&A format at the end, and so if anybody wants to type anything, I will literally, there's no question I will not attempt to answer. Apart from that, yeah, just last decade in startups. I'm sure we'll dig into the details, but began as a techie and then made my way as the CEO of my later ventures. So kind of ran the spectrum of the different skill sets and ended up working from the very beginning at a huge blue chip FTSE 100 corporate down to, one person freelancer, and then ended up getting acquired by a 120 person venture backed business. So kind of also had a little bit of experience at businesses of all shapes and sizes. And so, yeah, I'm sure we'll dig into my journey. Yeah, where do you want to start, Sam?
Well, you mentioned the big corporate. I won't mention names, but in your notes you kind enough sent across yesterday, there was you witnessed a colleague get a little plaque for 30 years of service, and then you quit the next day. Is that the blue chip you work for? Was that sort of one of those fork roads in a life where you thought, oh, this needs to change?
Yeah, that's how I got into startups. I mean, I've always known that I've wanted to get into startups, but never really figured out the moment that was right for me, and so ended up going the more traditional path. Got a lovely work opportunity with big software company on the foot. I'm just going to name them Sage, and they were a fantastic employer. They had me for my undergraduate placement for a year. Come back, they'd obviously invested a lot of time in me, so I felt quite bad when after 3 months we actually had this little ritual at Sage where if it was somebody's work anniversary or a birthday or something, they would send out an email to the floor, and there was about 100 people on our floor, and the people were in little circular desks, and people would sit in their little cubicles, and everybody that was behind that person would creep up behind them and burst into rapturous applause. That person would get a shock and turn around, and they'd get some little present or something. And that happened one day, and somebody said, Karen, here's for 30 years of service, and handed them a little. And I thought, Jesus, I don't want to be Karen. No offense to Karen. I'm sure Karen worked incredibly hard and is living a fantastic life. I just knew that wasn't for me, and so I did have a meeting with my manager the very next day and quit, much to their surprise, because it was heralded as quite the opportunity for a postgraduate to work there, but. That was it. That's where my startup journey began.
Nice. And so what was that first startup? Well, I know what it was. So I wonder if you could walk us through, was it Event Sneaker?
That's Event Sneaker. So I was 22 at this point. It was an events marketing and analytics platform. So we would plug into social, your Facebook, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, your email, newsletter subscribers. You could even push blog posts out through us to the blogging platforms at the time. Twilio for text messaging APIs. We would swap out every link in every piece of content you push out for a tracking link, track that back to a point of sale on a ticketing website like Eventbrite. So we would be able to say this tweet earned you £4,000. And then we kind of did big data before it was big data, before that was even a word, to say, tweet at these times with these keywords, attract more female delegates, or more elderly delegates, or whatever your targets are. Or this time area is very very productive for you and is resulting in good ROI, and kind of mine the data for insights. And yeah, we went 10 months actually from inception to acquisition. So quite an early acquisition.
Unusual. And that was the first time you went on an accelerator program, is that right, in Middlesbrough?
Yeah, it was in Middlesbrough. It was some joint initiative backed by Teesside University and some innovation program there. Fantastic experience. 9 years ago, it was Eric Rees and the Lean Startup was in full swing. Steve Blank, the startup playbook, all that stuff. Ash Moira, Alex Osterwalder, business model canvas. That was it at that moment. And so it was, although it was a very, miniature accelerator in the grand scheme of things, is not even around anymore. It was a profound experience for me, coming from nothing to all of these learnings, and so incredibly valuable.
Got it. So right, and that was the first time you'd come across the lean principles, the method. Yeah, okay. Which is of course what we advocate on our program. So you built SendGrid, Event Sneaker, and then you were acquired.
That's right.
And from there, you sorry, I'm reading my notes a bit unprofessionally. There's just so much to go through. So what happened after that?
Well, the events, the story of how we got acquired is an interesting one, because I always wondered before that, ultimately, if that's the end goal, and you're going to have this big liquidation event and you're going to have some wealth creation for you and the team and everything, if that's the goal, like, what does that look like? People talk about it so little. Like, how does that process unfold? And so the way that it happened to me for the first time was that there was an event with a speaker who was speaking in our industry, in the events industry. We checked out his company. It looked pretty cool. We said, these guys are doing some stuff that's similar to us. Let's go hear this guy talk. We went down. It was I forget what the startup's called, but it's like a boozy dinner. The intention is that alcohol gets people a little, social lubricant, and we have a nice meal together and we listen to a speaker. Table Crowd, it was called Table Crowd startup. And so we listened to this guy talk, and he clearly liked a bit of booze, and so did I. I'm from Newcastle, surprise, surprise. And we sat down, and the speaker ended up sat next to me over dinner. And I said, I really enjoyed your speech. We're actually planning some of the things that you mentioned and have a vision for. And he said, well, we're going to do this. I said, no, yeah, I think we're going to build that as well. And he said, but we're going to do it like this. I said, no, that's pretty much exactly what we want to do. He said, okay, come to the office tomorrow. So we came in, kind of sat down with our different technologies, literally, and just there and then he was like, let's think of an integration. If we can tease out a collaboration, what does that look like? Me and my co-founder were the techies. So we just went into the next room. We just knocked up some API integrations with their API and said, look, here's some added value. He was like, whoa, that's incredible. Went back to our hotel room and he texted us and said, just had a chat with the investor. Think we should talk some more. Went in the next day, his investor was there, talked and said, if you can build that in, 4 hours, what can we do together in the long term? He said, maybe a bigger collaboration. Took the train back up home, got an email, we want to buy you. It was literally like that. And that's, there was obviously the unfolding paperwork and legals that are quite a prolonged experience, but we pretty much said yes within the week. And that's what my acquisition looked like. Admittedly, a very small acquisition. We're talking like, 10 months into a very, very young business, like $500,000 total acquisition value. This is a 22-year-old thinking, I've made it, Mom,
And the key difference there was that you could build this, that 4-hour period where you went away and, that they could see the value wasn't just in, this, you could execute on your vision, the things that you were trying to build.
Yeah, it certainly, it just seemed like there was a good fit, feel like there was a vision fit, which I imagine is the most important thing. Then there felt like there was a bit of a value fit. And then we were just epitomizing the startup, just get in there and make things, move fast and break things. And yeah.
And was that an acquire hire? So they it wasn't about it's you stayed on for a while. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, that was a full acquisition of the entire company. They didn't keep it alone as a standalone subsidiary because the companies were very small. It made no sense to do that. They just completely merged everything, all the teams, all the technologies, everything. And so Event Sneaker doesn't exist as a standalone brand anymore. But if you go to event.com, evvnt.com, and you use their services, our technology that was acquired back then is still powering their services. Although I'm sure it's far more sophisticated over the last X years of development.
Got it. So you after a while you felt like you had ticked that box and you wanted to go again with your second startup.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's just started to feel like I was obviously a minority shareholder because our company was very, very small. Started to feel like a small cog in a big machine again. Still got that startup itch to build something bigger. Okay, you've kind of experienced the life cycle once at a very nominal level, but experienced it once from beginning to end. Let's go it again. And so founded Beatmatch, which was a marketplace for booking DJs in the nightlife industry, which was a terrible idea. It was a terrible idea. These DJs, clubs don't book DJs, on a web app. They book them in the green room over a beer, and with all their connections. It didn't make any sense. Yeah, I quickly invalidated that.
So yeah, but that's important though, isn't it? Because where did you think you went? Did you not do enough customer development? What was you obviously started with a theory. Did you go build it, or was it just quite a quick realization without deploying too much code or time?
Yeah, I wouldn't. It was obviously a failure, but I wouldn't chalk it up as an incorrect failure. I would almost chalk it up as a correct failure. Like I didn't go raise $1 million in VC, try it, and blow everybody's money. It was literally bootstrapped, validating it with an MVP, with as much customer development interviews as I could possibly muster. And, I was lucky in that I could develop as a techie. And so I built the MVP, but I didn't spend lots of money on developers developing a product. I just built something that represented what I thought the value was, and very quickly had people, had those awkward customer development interviews. Yeah, looks great, mate. Yeah, so do you want to buy it? Do you want to use it? No, And so it was the signs were clear, pretty early on. And that journey, I would say, from inception of the idea to committing it to it full time to invalidating it, probably took like 5 months.
Yeah,
like half a year of my life. And to me, that's like an acceptable length of time in taking a shot at something, those kind of cycles of learning.
And so perhaps you thought back to your time on the Middlesbrough accelerator about the process to go. I guess you went into that equipped with the knowledge that it's a minimum viable product, customer development, and if I don't get these key milestones, just kill it dead. You weren't afraid to. You weren't married to this, were you? I guess because you had that appreciation of the lean startup way.
Precisely right, and it actually ended up pivoting, classic startup pivot, because although I was banging my head against the wall with the nightlife DJs, what was really receptive was DJs for birthdays and weddings and bar mitzvahs, one-off, which makes a lot more sense in retrospect, one-off transactional events that lends itself to a marketplace business model. I want a DJ for a wedding. Where do I go? I go straight to Google and type in wedding DJs. If I can be the top of search, I can capture on that intent. And so ended up pivoting to Extravaganza, which I quite like the name of, is a booking platform for entertainers, musicians, but also balloon artists, clowns, literally any form of entertainer for sort of one-off events.
And so what happened to that?
Well, I had a fun start with it because I ran an interesting little process, which was, the problem with marketplace business models is supply and demand, chicken and egg. If you've got nothing on the platform, how do you drum up demand? But how do you get suppliers to create listings on your platform if you've got absolutely no demand? And so the way that I overcame that process within the space of 48 hours was I wrote a little scraper that just went through the Yellow Pages, that went through Thompson Local, that went through a bunch of different listing websites. Scraped. I can remember running it overnight and coming, and it was like, oh, I've got 200,000 entertainers in my database. That was easy. Literally just plunked them all into the system. It's a bit cheeky as well, of course, but you gotta ask for forgiveness, not permission, sometimes in startup world. And then I also scraped their contact details from all these listing services and pinged them all and said, hey, and the website was designed quite nicely as opposed to the Yellow Pages, which was trash. And so I said, hey, you've got a listing on this new website. It's yours to claim. Come and collect it. And for those that just kind of ignored that because it's yet another website asking for their input, I still listed them again quite cheekily on the website. And then sometimes they got a booking, even though they hadn't collected their listing. And then I phoned them up and went, yo, I've got a gig for you right now. You've just got to come and collect your listing on this platform. And that seemed to work very well.
So that was your hack. What inspired that? What was that? Just did you have to sit and think about how you could do it, or did you get some inspiration from some other startups that had the same sort of process?
Yeah, I did get a little bit of help there. It was Alex Stephanie, who was the founder of Just Park, now founder and CEO of Beam.
Yeah.
I sat down with him, and I can't remember what probably is over a few beers. That's where all my best ideas come from. And he was talking about how they fulfilled the supply side for Just Park and probably used some similar interesting little tactics. And so I recall that conversation as a seed of inspiration.
Like it, yeah. Beam's well worth checking out. They're doing wonderful stuff with homeless people at the moment.
Yeah.
So okay, so that didn't work out. That was another test and learn, move on experience. Is that right?
Another fail. Yes, I remember. Friday night. I'm out with some friends and getting a call from some bride-to-be, quite anxious. Where's my wedding band? It's my wedding night. I booked them through your platform. I'm like, you can't contact the band. We're just a listing portal. You wouldn't call up the Yellow Pages to say, where's my band? But obviously, because the way that marketplaces are positioned, you expect a level of customer service. And fortunately, the band turned up. Everything was absolutely fine. But I realized, what this is. I originally got in this because I like nightlife and DJs, and I've ended up on the phone to some bridezilla on my Friday night sorting something for 2 hours. And so I just decided to kind of wind that one down and decided to conclude it myself. And the way that I did that was I just reached out to a bunch of competitors in the space and said, hey, I've got all of this data, I've got all of this stuff. Do you want to buy it? And again, sold it for quite a nominal fee, but recouped some of the initial investment by selling the data to somebody.
Yeah, and that actually maybe someone else in a different life, position in their life would have, been prepared to take those calls or built up some sort of help desk that would have managed the inquiry. So
for sure, yeah. If you were passionate, there was an obvious avenue to begin fixing those problems at a product and a service level. But I just learned that wasn't my journey.
Got it. So that talks about having, and we hear about this often, you really do need to have, passion's an overused word, but you've got to want to do this, grind it out and enjoy it. And perhaps that wasn't the case with this one.
Well, amen. I'm a big believer in that. Obviously, we're about to speak about my next startup. It went for 3.5 years, and there are moments when the chips are down and your back's against a wall, and it is damn tough. Yeah. And if you aren't passionate about what you're doing, you just don't really have the drive to get through those difficult moments. So, yeah, I'm a big believer that making sure that you're passionate about what you're going to spend the next 5, 8, 10 years building is super important.
Yeah, that's a really important point, actually, isn't it? Because there will come a time with almost every startup where you've got to grind it out, and if you're lacking in that department, it's not going to help. It's going to make you miserable. So that's number 3. Flex, fourth startup. this is, I think, the most interesting one so far, or the one that went the furthest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flex was a virtual fitness company. You know, a lot of people here are probably familiar with Peloton, and to be honest, the swathe of fitness apps that's now available. It wasn't so much so 5 years ago, when the best apps were, you know, Swirkit and some very basic. They would have like a little GIF of someone doing push-ups for, you know, a few seconds before you had this fully integrated, amazing, you know, Barry's Bootcamp at home type experience. And so we initially set about to change that. And the first vision was Twitch for Fitness. And that was actually because my very original co-founder had created livecoding.tv, which was a Y Combinator company that was Twitch for teaching people coding skills. And so we joined forces and said, okay, I'm passionate about fitness. You've built a business model around live streaming. What does that look like? And we came up with this idea that any fitness instructor anywhere can extend their reach beyond just the walls of their studio by connecting with people online. And there were people already attempting to do this, big fitness influencers on Instagram, that were trying to monetize their big audiences with a live experience that is more intimate, and you can charge a premium. But they were, you know, hacking together, you know, whatever Zoom was before Zoom, and an Eventbrite page, and the experience was very, very poor. And so we thought, if we can build an integrated experience, we can get some of these influencers to deliver live classes. And if you were to even charge, you know, £1 to join a live fitness class with your favorite fitness influencer, and they've got, you know, some of them had like 16 million followers, you know, that's starting to look like an interesting business model. And so that was the initial idea for Flex.
So that, yeah, for iteration one. But you moved on from that. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, we raised venture in the UK and built something out, but was running into a lot of challenges with that business model, early teething problems. Most of the complications around live, and any live business model is just simply filling the programming. You know, it's live. If you come to the website and there's nothing on, there's not much to engage in. And so filling that programming schedule is of paramount importance. And so we started to look at on-demand content because we couldn't fill it as quick as Twitch managed to fill it. And then that led us to a business model of selling on-demand content in bundles, kind of like a more traditional e-commerce content store. But again, the intention was to work with these influencers that had huge audiences to sell to that sort of pre-vetted, already engaged audience. And that, we never really got far down that avenue before we finally got the spark of inspiration for what was the final iteration, which was Peloton for bodyweight fitness. So Peloton, if people aren't familiar, is a stationary spin bike at home with a huge screen attached to it. And you're physically watching a studio session as you're on the spin bike on this affixed screen. I think they retail for like $2,500, so quite a premium price point. And we wanted to offer that same experience. Oh, and the added dimension to that is that there's a lot of gamification involved. You know, revolutions per minute and the incline and all of the different metrics that you have available to you can be plotted on the screen to have a leaderboard, and people compete against one another, as in some spin classes here, like cycle and stuff like that. And so you're feeling like you're part of this community, you're feeling collaboratively engaged, but also quite competitive. Well, I've been behind Fred for the last 5 minutes, I really want to beat him. And so you speed up, and the instructors are incredible and engaging and far better than watching a GIF on an app. Anyway, so we wanted to offer that same experience for people that already have a lot of wearables, an Apple Watch, a Jawbone, a Fitbit, you know, an Android Wear, so on and so forth. And so we attempted to create the bodyweight workout version of that, where all you need is a TV, you need your existing device, and then you just cast our web app to your TV, and then you get this full-blown integrated fitness experience where you see your calories burned. It even counted your reps for a number of different movements. and it plotted people against one another in a collaborative and a competitive leaderboard. And also there was a collaborative calories burnt progress bar at the top that when it popped, the instructor would say, "Fantastic, we've all done it. We've burned a collective, 1.2 million calories. Go us!" And so that was what Flex ended up being.
It started in the UK, but it ended up going through Techstars in Boulder, Colorado. But before that, did you start it by yourself and then bring in a co-founder, or had you got that person in mind already? It was a team effort.
That's right. So the guy from the Y Combinator who helped me come up with the Twitch for Fitness idea actually decided that wasn't the direction that he wanted to take, and he left quite early on. Yeah. And so I ended up recruiting, very amicable. In fact, he's my close friend to this day. And so I ended up recruiting 2 co-founders, and I didn't have people in my network that were it was the right stage in their life that I could pull from my network. And so I actually ran a recruitment process to find my co-founders, as you would an employee. Obviously very different because they're a business partner, and all of the communications were as such that I was looking for a partner and not somebody to be my subordinate. But I did recruit my co-founders, ran a recruitment process to find them.
That's interesting, because during our last accelerator program, that came up a few times, particularly technical co-founders as well.
Yeah, it always does.
That was right. So we haven't got enough time to go into all the details, but what did that look like briefly? Was it a job advert or equivalent to that type of thing?
Yeah, it was a job advert on workinstartups.com, on unicornhunt.com, on fsuccess.com, in working startups. Did I say that already? And in angellist.com. And it was the same one. And the copy was very, very important. It was, "Hey, I've got this idea. It's going to look nothing like we envisioned from the outset. We're going to learn and grow together. It's going to be this huge adventure. I'm looking for an equal. I'm not here to tell you what to do. We're going to split the equity. It's our thing." That was the language. I had technical skills, which made it a bit easier to recruit a techie because I built a little something. Obviously, there are a lot of listings for business people looking for technical people to build their vision. But I think it really is about communicating it in a way that I'm looking for you to come on board as a partner and for it to be our thing, not I'm a business person with an idea, you techie are going to build it. And if anybody here has any interest in recruiting a co-founder, this is a talk I actually delivered at Techstars a few times, and I've written a post about it. So we'd be more than happy to share the details of that with anybody here that's interested in that.
So just on that for a moment then, there's a huge rise in no-code, low-code solutions out there. And I must admit, I underestimated how much time it would actually take. I mean, you get the impression, it's drag and drop stuff, but I understand it can take quite a while. But I suppose, I mean, you probably don't know, but there is an argument for if you do go down that road and you build your minimum viable product, it's arguably going to be easier to get technical people on board because you show a willingness and you built something that you can obviously show them. You're further down the bootstrapping road, I guess.
That was certainly my experience, and obviously I built it with actual code. But a startup I'm advising right now is using Adello, I think it is the no-code app building solution, and I have been incredibly impressed with what they've managed to build with no coding skills. And so those no-code solutions are coming on leaps and bounds. Yeah, very, very impressed by them.
Excellent. Right, a couple of half an hour in, we still haven't talked about Techstars. Let's hear it. Actually, first of all, could you explain what Techstars is and the sort of the origin story? They were one of the first, and then your experience and some of the biggest takeaways, please.
Sure thing. So yeah, Techstars are an accelerator. What we've sort of grown to understand is that traditional accelerator format. They take teams from all over the world, put them in an office for 3 months in this intensive boot camp-like experience, teaching you everything you need to, be good startup founders and give you the fundamentals of business. And then the broader support network is available to you from that point onwards. They are a very mentorship-driven accelerator program. Their whole ethos is around people in the community, in the ecosystem that have already made it, giving back to that community. And so have just an incredible mentorship network. I think Y Combinator was actually the first one, the infamous Silicon Valley accelerator. And David Cohen, there's a story at Techstars, actually emailed Paul Graham and said, hey, I'm thinking of, you know, can I franchise this thing that you're doing? And Paul Graham was like, nah. And so David Cohen and David Brown went, oh, well, we'll set up our own thing. And obviously now Techstars is a behemoth in its own right. I think 12 years old at this stage, and the biggest accelerator in the world. It has, unlike Y Combinator, it stayed in Silicon Valley, Techstars has locations in Kenya and South Africa and Singapore and just literally everywhere. And all of those locations are open to you if you're an alum.
Okay, brilliant. And it was also founded by one of our heroes, Brad Feld.
Brad Feld, yeah.
Yeah. So, and just to, yeah, it was great to hear how you described their work, because that's exactly how our accelerator is, what it's premised on. Is that mentoring on steroids or networking on steroids?
I like that.
Yeah, that's from someone else. I thought that covered it brilliantly. So it's a heck of a feat just to get on it in the first place. So you took Flex. Was this your third iteration, or had you gone through those iterations whilst you were on the accelerator?
No, this was by the time we came around to the Peloton for bodyweight fitness version of Flex. I think was a much stronger value proposition, reflected by the fact Techstars were interested at that point. Because we'd applied like, you know, I got rejected for the different various Techstars programs like 5-6 times, you know, Y Combinator included, until we finally came up with that much stronger value proposition and got accepted.
And this was the typical model where they take a chunk of equity in exchange for some investment upfront.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and you went through a 3-month program of in fact, what did that look like? Those 3 months.
I recall I'm casting my mind back to 2018. It was a program of 3 parts. There was kind of the outset, where there was a huge emphasis on the fundamentals of the business. So obviously throughout, you had your mentors that were fantastic at sales, marketing, you know, each of these distinct disciplines that were both delivered in a classroom format and provided in close group mentorship, sometimes as little as 1-to-1. That was available throughout the program, but the beginning of the program centered on the fundamentals. There was a lot of investment in us as founders and building us as people, like conscious leadership and conflict resolution, you know, the ability to actually communicate with your founders so that you don't have a founder breakup, and just figuring out those soft human skills that are so deeply important to leadership. And, you know, if you're going to be running a company of 1,000 people, you better be damn good at those kind of things. And so there was a huge emphasis on that. And then from an organizational point of view, for the first third of the program, big focus on not working in the organization, sales, marketing, but working on the organization, your actual operational cadence. How do you actually orient and run your organization so that you're making what they like to say, progress, not motion? I think we've all had those days where, you know, you finish a day's work and you feel exhausted, and it's like, damn, I feel like I've been busy all day, but like, what have I accomplished? You know, and I think organizations can feel like that, you know, on a monthly, on a quarterly, on a yearly basis. It feels like there's a lot of busy work getting done, but not really driving towards a pointed aim. And so a lot of it was instilling OKRs as a principle for making sure that isn't the case, and you're making progress, not motion.
OKRs?
Objectives and what does OKR stand for again? Objectives and key results. Is that?
Okay, got it. Yep.
Yeah. So there was so we had an operational cadence personally at Flex that was. We had a quarterly OKR, which looked like a quarterly all hands meeting where we're blue sky. What are we going to accomplish for the next 3 months? And then usually we would have a sprint planning meeting where we would sit down and decide what we're attempting to accomplish that sprint. And then, of course, we would have our daily check-in meetings. We would meet every morning. Everybody would kind of say what they were going to accomplish, and then we would break. And then each morning we would plot, because the OKRs need measurable metrics, because they're kind of like smart objectives. And so every morning meeting, we would look at the mixed panel dashboard and we would plot our analytics on this chart. And so the combination of the quarterly, the weekly, the daily check-in with the OKR structure meant that we were very, very zoned in on exactly what we needed to move from X to Y. And I think Y Combinator and Techstars instill that kind of that level of rigor in your organization that results in the speed that these companies accomplish, because there is no fluff in that environment.
Okay. I've got loads more questions on this, but I can leave it out. You've got to tell us a story about when you met Brad Feld.
Yeah, so Brad was obviously involved in the program somewhat, because it was the Boulder Techstars, and Brad was there. In fact, he was the floor below us where Foundry is based, his prolific VC firm. And he delivered a few talks, but he's a busy dude, and so we didn't see him as much as David Brown and David Cohen. But one time there was David, is his name Dave Costello? Yeah. Dick Costello of Twitter, was founding a fitness company called Chorus, and he ended up shutting it down, took on a bunch of VC, 10, 20 million, including Foundry Group's money, and decided that's not going to work. Very publicly said it's not going to work. So I was anticipating, the question in a VC boardroom, what's going on, Elliott? If Dick Costello can't build a similar company to what you want to build, how the hell can you build it, And so I felt like I needed an adequate answer to that answer during fundraising. And so I asked for a meeting with Brad Feld, and Brad has there's literally a blog post, how to have a meeting with Brad Feld, and he believes that all meetings can be done in 20 minutes. And, he's a very busy guy. And so I'm reading this blog post, and I'm going to meet Brad Feld. I need to make sure I'm on point here. And so I sit down quite nervously, and I tell him why I want the meeting, because of Dick. He said, oh, yeah, okay, well, we can help there. So what is it that you do? I'm like, heart's pounding a little bit, elevator pitch. And so I pitch. And there's just this moment of sort of consideration, and he nods vigorously. Yeah, that's a much better idea than Chorus. So that was a vindicating moment, and yeah, he went on to say how much he liked our idea and how much he supported it, and then I actually did have a meeting with Seth from Foundry Group. We were a bit early stage for them, but sort of began that pipeline towards Foundry if we were on that trajectory. Yeah.
You finished the 3 months, you went through demo day, you then went on a fundraising roadshow across the States, New York, LA, San Francisco.
That's right.
And that led to an acquisition, is that right?
Yeah, I ended up sitting down with a CEO of a live streaming company that I met up with. Literally, my fundraising experience, unfortunately, we probably don't have the time to dig into it all. What a wild ride it is, running around the States trying to raise millions of dollars of venture capital. And sometimes it just feels like banging your head against a wall. And then in other times, things just come out of nowhere and surprise you. So I sit down with this guy. And at the time, I remember being quite huffed and quite downtrodden. And I was just exhausted from fundraising. Been in quite some time around Silicon Valley. And I was just complaining, sometimes you get into a dark mindset as a founder and everything's a problem instead of solutions. I was just in one of those headspaces, and I was like, nothing's working, everything sucks, my product sucks, my marketing sucks, everything sucks. And he's like, yeah, you remind me of me, back when I was that early in my journey. I see it, Elliott, how can I help? And asked for all of the things that I needed help with. And clearly there must have been the right questions, because I get on the bus on the way home and he goes, hey, I want to wire you a couple thousand. It's like all I did was complain about how much I sucked, and now I've secured a round. And he was actually a Sequoia scout, and so the money ended up coming from Sequoia, the prolific West Coast VC, and then they ended up acquiring us to kind of augment their live streaming offering and their team with our staff at the time as an acqui-hire.
Nice. Excellent. Right. Yeah, there's way more, but unfortunately, so what are you doing there? So when did this finish? This was a few years ago, right? 2, 3 years ago, when you were acquired.
Yeah, that was 2000 and early 2019, and then I became the head of marketing for that company out in San Francisco, and then they were actually acquired by Logitech in September that year for 150 million. So it was a decent exit for the founders and the investors. It's not Airbnb, but it was a good solid exit. And so that was kind of my time done. I didn't want to go work at Logitech, and so I came back to the UK to figure out what was next.
And that is A3.
A3, yes, which is complicated to break down because we were actually in the process of a company merger, believe it or not, with another company. But we leveraged the power of story to drive social and environmental change, both as an in-house production company. So we produce our own film and TV shows. Our first TV shows is due out next month, which I'm sure anybody adding me on LinkedIn will hear me raving about. And we also partner with existing films to drive an impact from their story. And the company that we're merging with actually ran Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo, the Hollywood blockbuster, their impact campaign in Europe. And for anybody that's seen Dark Waters knows that it's about a dangerous chemical that's toxic to humans, that's used in a lot of products right now. And this organization secured an EU-wide ban of those chemicals. And so that's the kind of campaigns that we look to run. It's partnering with huge Hollywood IP to drive social environmental change.
Right. Okay. That has brought us up just in time for 15 minutes of Q&A. If there aren't any Q&A questions, that's fine, because I've got loads more that we can dive into.
Sorry if I talk too much. I told you you'd have to stop us, Sam.
No, there was never going to be enough time. So, folks, if you have any questions about anything, you can either put them in the chat or unmute your microphones. Okay, so we've got one. Could you say the places you advertise for the partner again? So when you found your co-founder, you mentioned some sites.
Yeah, hey Emma. So we did workinstartups.com, which was actually probably the best one for the UK. I think they've got a section on their website specifically for founders looking for other founders. So workinstartups.com. Unicornhunt.com was okay. F6S.com was okay, and angellist.com was okay. But I remember Work in Startups actually being the most fruitful for me, and actually where I think both of the co-founders that I ended up partnering with came from.
Just on resources, you mentioned some no-code, low-code solutions. You remember what they were?
Adello, you're very welcome, Emma. Adello is the name of, I don't know how the heck you spell it. Adello.
Got it.
Adello, no code. Adalo. And I think that's the biggest Adello versus, what's the other one? Bubble. That rings a bell. I can't speak to Bubble, but Adello has blown my mind with what they've accomplished with absolutely no coding skills.
So what might that look like then? Someone invests 8-10 hours of their time. They can walk away with something that functions like an app might function. I mean, no backend presumably, but people could go through a process of illustrating what it looks like.
Yeah, no, they've got a full-blown app distributed through the iOS and Android Play Store. It's got user login. It's a streaming app. It's a meditation app. They've got all of their content streaming through it. They've got complicated language functionality. It's in English. It's in Arabic. There's analytics that syncs with Mixpanel, so they can see user behaviors, funnels to optimize, all with zero code. And I mean, these guys have no code. These guys can't even do a little bit of code. So I've been very impressed. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So just thinking back to the accelerator program, you were on it for 3 months. Mindful it was a few years ago. what were some of the key takeaways? Did you have any sort of, epiphanies or moments where you thought, oh, I'm so glad I'm here because we'd have never have learnt this, or I wouldn't have appreciated that?
With regard to what? Sorry, I was reading the comments down.
All right, so thinking back to the accelerator program, what were some of
Yes.
the biggest takeaways or learning moments, I guess?
Yeah, God, I mean that's a long list.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things, because I've done 6 accelerators at this point in time. I'm a bit of an accelerator junkie. Techstars obviously being the biggest. It provided just a cohesion in the team, because you were going through this pipeline of learning together, and you had the opportunity to reflect on what you were learning and have that dialogue with your co-founders and your early employees and saying, wow, I didn't know that. And you were all in this very sort of humble space, just taking it on with as much humility as you possibly can. And that created this opportunity for you to learn and grow together. So by the time you were spat out the other side of the pipeline, there was just so much alignment. You thought the same way about all of the concepts, marketing, branding, business development, sales, because you'd been squeezed through that process together, and it kind of bonded you as a company. And so that was one of the biggest things that ahead of time I hadn't anticipated would be a benefit.
What about some of the tools that you used? You mentioned how you were tracking your OKRs. I mean, was that a bit of software, or simply an Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah, there was a lot of analog stuff at Techstars, man. I was quite surprised. There was something about the tactile nature of post-it notes on a big whiteboard in front of everybody with a big Kanban board. But we used the Kanban for our sort of sprint tracking. For the OKRs, Techstars actually provided a template that we augmented slightly and made a bit sexier. But I can share that with anybody that's interested in. Including, I'll just leave all of the data in, so you can actually see a full example of a filled in one. I won't redact anything, so you can see it in action if that's useful to people. What other tools did we use? Yeah, I guess that's it, operation wise.
And then thinking about the investment proposition, the roadshow you went on. What are some of the bits of advice that you might offer to folks who are thinking of going for their first raise?
I mean, that is big. Yeah. That's a big area. Yeah. Fundraising advice is pretty plentiful online because it's such a big part of the journey. I would say you need to give. If you imagine when somebody writes a news story, if you've done any PR, even attempting to do some PR hacking yourself, you need to give them something, dropping a celebrity name in there as a supporter. It all of a sudden makes the story so much easier to write about. Oh, this thing is backed by, this celebrity, or advised by the CEO of whatever. Those little tidbits that you can draw in that make the story work in your favor. I would just go out and collect as much of them as possible. So I would be happy, like if I was doing, I went and recruited the founder of MyFitnessPal to be an advisor to Flex. To be honest, he was miles away and he was super busy and he wasn't that helpful. But the fact that he formally put his name down as an advisor meant that I use that everywhere. Oh yeah, MyFitnessPal advisors. Yeah, the CEO of MyFitnessPal, Mike Lee, advisors. To be honest, that was a bit of a bit cheeky because he wasn't adding that much value. But when a VC sees that, it adds to that story. And so collecting as many of those as possible, it was like Techstars alum, advised by this person, XYZ. Yeah, all of those different story points, again, framing around if a journalist was to write about you, what are those little things that are the story worthy, and then trying to get those into those outreach, those connection emails to try and secure those meetings.
Got it. And so from the investor end then, I mean, this is obvious, we know this from experience for our accelerators, the further down the road you can get bootstrapping, validating customers, you become a more attractive investment proposition.
Yeah. It's a funny old game, the different routes you can take to scale these days. Obviously, with Reid Hoffman's blitz scaling and the idea of just dominating a market by raising as much money as you possibly can. And then you see huge failures with huge war chests, through to the traditional lean startup, try and do as little as you possibly can. And I was a devout lean startup, zealot. I truly believed in that. And I've seen some other approaches that have worked quite well now that I've softened to. But if you don't have access to the kind of war chests that they do in Silicon Valley, where they can turn around and ask their VC buddies for a couple million, and that's their starting point of validation, then I think you don't have an option but to be as wise as you possibly can with what little resource you have. And the very principle of the lean startup, reduce every assumption to an experiment that can be validated or invalidated with as few resources as humanly possible, over and over again.
Got it.
Sam, do you mind if I ask a question?
Fire away, please.
Thanks, Sam. Elliott, just on that point you made, just around marketing. So what sort of things did you do for marketing that worked well? What sort of things did you do that you thought would work well that failed?
Hey, I don't actually know who's talking to say.
Oh, that's Nathan. He was on our previous accelerator program. Nathan.
Oh, fantastic, Nathan. Thanks for the question. What did we do at Flex? So my CMO actually ran all of the marketing, but I believe we saw a great amount of success in hacking the Apple Watch listings. That was quite an untapped space at the time, and we figured out some cool keywords and stuff such that if you were an Apple Watch owner, you would find us quite easily. We ranked as one of the highest Apple Watch fitness apps. That was a lot of traffic for us. We did get some placements from Apple by, we were piggybacking a lot on Apple technologies because the Apple Watch was our first one. And so we got some placements in the Apple App Store. They were relationships driven through Techstars. And then we did a lot of influencer marketing at Flex. The talent we had on screen had pre-existing audiences. We got some quite prolific fitness instructors from LA. They provided an existing audience base that worked quite well. What didn't work well, we were running Facebook ads at the time. I'm not really in a place to evaluate them because my business partner, Matt, kind of ran those. What else was I across, really? Yeah, sorry, Nathan. I wish I could be more helpful on that one.
No, it's fine. Not at all.
Yeah. But let me have a think on that one, and send you over some stuff and maybe dig into the marketing folder. I've still got all of our docs saved and see what experiments are in there. I know that there were certainly plenty. We used the what's the book by Traction by Gabriel from DuckDuckGo, the bullseye framework where you map all of the different acquisition channels and then promote them. And I know that we ran so many different experiments. I just, towards the back end of the process, I was so heavily focused on fundraising and product that I wasn't across that, unfortunately.
No, thank you. Thanks, Elliott.
I've had a question about cultural differences between startup-friendly places like Boulder and less well-developed ecosystems. So what do you think there are any obvious ones? I mean, I've read the story about why Boulder sort of, well, at least I think I understand why, but thinking about, other cities in the US or UK, why haven't they taken off? Any thoughts or opinions on that?
Well, at large, I feel like the startup industry is pretty good. Like now I've moved away from tech into media, into film and TV, which is very cliquey, very bitchy, classic LA type stuff. And it is a far cry from any tech ecosystem, pick Newcastle, London, Portugal that I've ever been in. So across the board, I'd say pretty good compared to other spaces in people's receptiveness and feeling like we're in this together. But having said that, Boulder was was almost difficult to put into words. It felt like the Techstars give first mentality had like seeped into the actual towns and cities, of Boulder and Denver. It just felt like everybody embodied them. And I guess it stands to reason the Techstars would be a large part in driving their economy and driving their innovation. And the governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, is the fourth co-founder of Techstars. And so actually even at a political level, sort of an influencing factor. But it really was, anybody there was just willing to give up their time to contribute to this give back philosophy. So much so that our mentors that we sat down with for months, we were like, oh, let's get our equity agreements drafted up, let's get you compensated as advisors. And they were like, whoa, God, you don't even know what you are yet. Let's just, spend a few months, going back and forth here and there, and let's see if there's a value. And that kind of epitomizes what it was like out there. And that's what I kind of now embody, those principles, and have done that actually with the startups that I'm advising now, and would love to bring some to Leicester in any way, shape or form that can be channeled through me.
It's interesting you mentioned channels, because we have something, we've developed our help engine. So if anyone hasn't seen it yet and you're working on a high growth scalable startup, please visit the website, have a look. You'll see, I think there are over 60 individuals. It's anonymized at the moment. And people have put descriptions about their skills, experience, and you can select a session with some of those folks. We monitor, moderate those, so that no guarantee that you'll connect with them, but please feel free to use it. And Elliott, it would be great to have you on board when you come up here. So right. Another question has come through. What do you most appreciate about your non-technical co-founders?
Yeah, what did I most appreciate about Matt? Well, they obviously had a wealth of skills and experience and skill sets that the technical founder just simply doesn't. Mainly in storytelling and brand and crafting that narrative of what you stand for out in the marketplace, and occupying the, those important attributes in the mind's eye of the market. And that whole piece about crafting your brand, your story, and effectively communicating that is, just as big, if not bigger. You build it, but build it and they will come doesn't work. And so just as big, if not bigger part of the equation. And so, yeah, that's invaluable.